Bonjour. Hello. And welcome. Buenos dias. Bonjour et bienvenue. Je m'appelle Trisha
Hello,
Wind.
welcome. I'm Trisha Wind, Head of Program for Sharing Knowledge, Innovation, and Partnership for Education. We often use the English abbreviation GPE KIX. Welcome to this session regarding the proposals that KIX launched on May 16th. This is a call to submit proposals to support our partners for implementation as part of a new initiative on resilience of our education system of the observatory of the GPE KIX. I'm talking from Ottawa in Canada on the non-conceded territories in place that we call Ottawa today, where people have been living here for such a long time. This is our agenda for today. I will present the CDRI and KIX, and then my colleague Tabs, administrator of the programs, will present the call for proposal, the goals, the questions related to the project, and then we will have our main administrator reviewing what is expected of the proposal for this project. We will continue now to answer your questions, which you had received by email. We will also have time to answer some additional questions that you may have and which you can already start sending through this during the seminar. And we will try to answer this question as much as possible during this session.
Before we begin, let me mention a couple of housekeeping points. This webinar is being recorded and will be posted online, but only the presenters will be visible and named in the recording. We will be speaking in English and French. Simultaneous interpretation is available in English, French, and Spanish. To locate that, look at the bottom toolbar of this meeting window in Zoom and look for that interpretation icon. It usually looks like a little globe. When you click on interpretation, a pop-up window will appear with the different language options. Please select the one of your preference from that drop-down menu. The slides we are using on screen are in English. If you want to follow along in Spanish or French, there are links to those documents available in the chat. And so we'll try to remind you of what slide we are on as we go. So this is slide 3. And now I'm moving to slide 4. And I'll switch back into French for a moment. So je commencerai par précéder le CRDI.
Alors, d'abord pour présenter le CRDI, le Centre de recherche pour le développement. Okay, this is a Canadian agency working in Asia, in Africa, South America, working on a series of topics related to innovation. KIX is a joint initiative in global partnership with GPE for education and C4DI. This is a sharing of knowledge and innovation for the 90 partner countries of GPE, and the goal of KIX is attached to the GPE objective to support our partner countries in order for them to use the data and innovation that they need in order to accelerate access to knowledge and the results of knowledge and gender equality in the education system, to have an equitable and a resilient, inclusive education system. KIX is made up of 3 interconnected parts, which you can see here to your right on this slide. On top, we have the learning exchange with 4 hubs, people working in the educative system for learning and exchange. And their priorities is guiding the call for proposals that the CDRI is, or the IDRC is launching. This is set up to support the education system. When research is done, it can be also shared with other people, the hubs. So this is a way to identify how to support the countries in order to get some proofs and to build up capacities depending on the specific needs. Now I'm moving on to the next slide, which is number 5.
So as we will explain, the Observatory Initiative will fund 6 regional observatory projects that involve 90 GPE partner countries. These will be organized in different groups, and those are shown in different colors in the map. We'll return to this in a moment. To provide a short background of where this initiative came from. When the COVID-19 pandemic started, many GPE partner countries looked for opportunities to discuss practical and policy responses so they could quickly learn from one another's experiences and adopt promising approaches, particularly geared to mitigating the effects of the pandemic on their education for those who are most vulnerable. And they took a strong gender lens in doing so, knowing that there were very differential impacts on different types of learners and different types of teachers. So the origin of the KIX COVID observatory, which facilitated rapid policy analysis and intercountry learning about how to support the well-being of learners and the ongoing functioning of the education systems across Africa. That project was led by the Association for the Development of Education in Africa and the African Population Health Research Center. The observatory produced numerous analyses and facilitated events. Some of them were linked to the KIX Africa regional hubs. You can find the outputs of that project on the gpekix.org website. From the experience of the pandemic, many stakeholders realized that education systems are not well equipped to deal with shocks and disruptions, whether those arise from public health emergencies, natural disasters, including the severe effects of climate change, conflicts, or other shocks. And there might be other disruptions that include great opportunities, like artificial intelligence. Calls have emerged to support education systems to build their resilience and do so in ways that support gender equality, equity, and inclusion. This new observatory initiative is informed by that original project, as well as by a scoping study that was commissioned in preparation for this call, which also looked at documentation, it looked at sector plans, and it also interviewed people from GPE partner countries to inform this call. So now I'm going to hand over to my colleague Taib Fall, who will share more about this observatory initiative.
Hello, I will be speaking in French, so I kindly ask that you put your headset to listen to the translation. Bonjour. Dans cette section,
hello. Now, in this section, I'm going to talk about the scope of the observatory, the objectives, the research questions, and the this initiative, the structure of the initiative. The global goal of this initiative is to improve resilience of the education systems in the partner countries of the GPE, thanks to research and to probing data. Now, the partners for implementing this project will have to establish some local observatory to conduct applied research and to mobilize the results, the outcome. Since we are going to mention this concept of resilience of the education system, here is a definition proposed by Johannes Dilks and their colleagues. And the definition is the capacity of an education system to absorb, resist, and adapt to disturbances while ensuring the continuity of its vital functions. Now, two aspects of the education system resilience are of particular interest to the observatory initiative. First of all, the existing practices related to education system resilience in the GPE partner countries. Although the resilience concept of the education systems has been adopted in an international development discourse or message, there is still a lack of consensus on what it actually means in theory, but also in practice. Therefore, the observatory aim is first and foremost to examine the meanings and practices of education system resilience in the GPE partner countries, mainly how past or current disruptions would influence the education system preparedness and the problems that countries are trying to address through the education system resilience efforts. Therefore, the implementation of this research component could take the form of case studies and cross-country comparisons, among other approaches. Secondly, the initiative will focus on anticipating future disruptions to education systems. The scoping study has also revealed that little work actually has been done to anticipate future disruption. So we therefore hope that implementing partners will explore the changing landscapes and potential future disruptions in the GPE partner countries, particularly those that have not been experienced before, and their implications for marginalized groups. This part of the study will be based on strategic foresight by collecting and analyzing data and exploring the implications for the next 5 to 10 years.
As we
rely on the various studies or outcomes of the scoping study, the first goal would be to generate and mobilize evidence about how education stakeholders understand and practice education system resilience in GPE partner countries. The second goal would be to generate and to mobilize insight into changing landscapes, potential future disruptions and opportunities, and effective approaches to address these issues. Now, the third objective would be to use the generated evidence to identify recommendations for crisis preparedness and the education system resilience of the GPE partner countries. Now, this initiative will be led by three main questions, research questions. First question, how do education stakeholders understand and practice education system resilience in the GPE partner countries? That's the first question. Second question, what future disruptions to education systems in the GPE partner countries do education and other relevant stakeholders envision? And finally, what are some potentially effective approaches to addressing these future disruptions? Now, the structure and the initiative of the observatory will cover all the partner countries in 6 regions of the world, 1 in Latin America and the Caribbean, 1 in East, West, Central, and Southern Africa, and 4 in Europe, Central Asia, Middle East, North Africa, South Asia and Southeast Asia, and the Pacific region. The partners for implementation will examine the actual meaning and practices of education system resilience and will also explore the potential future disruptions and the changing landscapes in the partner countries. Furthermore, according to the mandate of the GPE, the regional observatory will also focus on early childhood education, primary, secondary education, and teacher training. I will now give the floor to my colleagues, Servier, who will cover again the details of the proposals.
Hello, everyone. We have just heard from Taib about the focus, objectives, guiding questions, and structure of the observatory initiative. I'm going to talk about some of the details of the initiative and what we are going to look for in applicants and in proposals. In the last 12 months, we have launched 5 calls. For those who read or applied to these calls, we would like to emphasize that the observatory call is quite different from previous calls because we received a few emails where applicants ask where they may resubmit their previous proposals. Previous KIX calls were about conducting research in support of promising or proven innovations. The observatory call is not about scaling research. In this call, we are basically looking for the organizations that will help us to implement the observatory initiative. And by the implementation, we mean conducting and mobilizing research on the 2 main topics: meanings and practices of education system resilience and exploration of future disruptions to the education system in the GPE partner countries. If you are planning to apply to the call as an individual organization or as a consortium, please make sure that you meet this main selection criteria for implementing partners. An ideal implementing partner should have a strong background in the social science research, a good understanding of the education sector in the region of focus, a solid track record of research at multi-country or regional scale, and a lead applicant should be headquartered in a low and middle income country. If you are an individual organization and do not fully meet this criteria, but really interested in the call and believe that you have something to contribute to the initiative, consider forming a consortium with other organizations. In the call document, we also have general eligibility criteria, and we encourage them to review as well. As mentioned earlier, and I would like to clarify that again, there will be 6 regional observatories. There will be 1 observatory project per region, and we will not be funding multiple observatory projects in each region. The observatory project in each region will be executed by 1 implementing partner, and it could be an individual organization or a consortium of up to 3 organizations. In addition to consortium partners, the project may also have, for example, research consultants if needed. We have a few expectations for implementing partners, and we encourage you to consider these things while preparing the proposal. As mentioned earlier, the observatory will consist of 2 components: examination of meanings and practices of education system resilience and exploration of potential future disruptions. And we expect partners to conduct research on these 2 components, because we received a few emails where applicants ask where they may focus only on 1 component. The idea that you'll be focusing on 2 components. As you prepare the proposal, please keep in mind that there are other initiatives related to education system resilience, and we would like the observatory to be complementary to those initiatives. And in the proposal, we expect you to position your work in light of those initiatives. In the call document, we provide example of such initiatives. Some of them are supported by the Global Partnership for Education, also some implemented by the Education Out Loud and other actors. So please keep that in mind and try to position your work in light of the different initiatives that are taking place. We also expect applicants to undertake research for development. You need not only to conduct research, but also to mobilize it. And your work needs to be problem and action oriented. When examining potential future disruptions, we envision implementing partners to draw on foresight methodologies. We understand that foresight methodologies are somewhat new and not everyone might be familiar with them. If you're not familiar with the foresight methodologies, please think about how you could address this gap. For example, including a foresight consultant or a consortium partner with foresight expertise. On our side, we will support implementing partners with a foresight component of the project through capacity strengthening and sharing of the best practices. And we expect implementing partners to implement the whole project through the GEI lens. Vulnerable groups are disproportionately affected by disasters and other crisis situations and are often invisible in disaster risk reduction planning, which further leads to their marginalization. So it's important to consider the needs in the development of the resilient education systems of these groups. So GI should be considered in the design, analysis, data collection, and knowledge mobilization. And lastly, our partners will be expected to participate in the informal community of practice that we will establish just to share kind of experience and information among implementing partners from different regions about their research process, recruitment strategies, preliminary results, and knowledge mobilization strategies. So please keep in mind those expectations as you develop the proposals. For each region, we establish budget limits based on the number of countries and other considerations. We ask applicants to propose the to propose the budget considering the set limits and activities that you are going to implement. So when developing the budget, please think about the scale and scope of your activities, whether it's research and knowledge mobilization in the region of focus. You can see the details of the evaluation criteria in the call document. But to summarize, we are looking for strong proposals that provide a clear justification for why you are interested in becoming an implementing partner in the observatory initiative. Demonstrate a research record at a multi-country or regional level. Present appropriate and feasible methodologies and design for both components of the observatory initiative. Outline a robust knowledge mobilization strategy, include a theory of change and processes for monitoring the progress and results of the project. Demonstrate expertise and capacities necessary to successfully undertake the project, and provide a clear justification for the requested budget. Here, just a quick reminder about the call timeline. Applications are due at midnight Eastern Daylight Time on July 11th. We'll be reviewing your applications in July and August, and we will inform applicants of the results on September 2nd. And I'm going to pass the floor to Trish.
Thanks, Serhii. So the presentation so far addresses some of the questions that we've received by email, and Serhii and I will now turn to additional questions. Please keep in mind that some of the questions that we receive are very specific to someone's organization or proposal ideas. We cannot reply to each individual query, so sometimes we present a more generalized version of the questions that we hope would be useful to all applicants. So I'm on slide 22 now. So first couple of questions are about eligibility. May organizations that are headquartered in a lower middle income country, but not in a GPE partner country apply? And the answer is yes. Please keep in mind, though, that the research funded by GPE KIX focuses on the GPE partner countries. And we'd like to clarify that by low and middle income countries, we are including lower income, lower middle income, upper middle income countries altogether. And there's more details about that on the call's FAQ page, the frequently asked questions page. Another question was about, can organizations headquartered in an LMIC involve researchers who are based elsewhere? And the answer is yes, for sure.
Okay, we have another eligibility question, and it's, can national offices of international organizations be lead applicants? If your organization has multiple locations, the headquarters must be in a low and middle income country. We again would like to emphasize that the lead applicant needs to be headquartered in a low or middle income country.
Some more eligibility questions. Can private sector organizations apply? And the answer is yes. Proposals that include private sector actors should demonstrate how their financial or technical know-how or other resources will contribute to the project. If it's financial, there is space in the budget notes section to explain. The only private sector actor that is not eligible to apply would be a provider of for-profit provision of core education services. And if you want more information, please check GPE's private sector policy for more information. Can current KIX, GPE, or Education Out Loud grantees apply? And the answer is yeah, sure. Number 3, can ministries of education be consortia partners? And that answer is no. Ministries of education cannot be consortia partners and receive KIX funding. The majority of GPE's other funding goes to ministries of education through a number of different funding mechanisms. KIX is a complementary mechanism within GPE, and it funds different actors. So applicants are encouraged definitely to involve and engage national and local governments as strategic partners in their research, but these ministries cannot receive funding through KIX grants.
We have a few questions about the areas of focus. The first question, does the call cover all levels of education from primary to tertiary? As a mechanism of global partnership for education, KIX focuses only on early childhood to secondary as well as teacher training. So please keep that in mind. vocational education or higher education will be the focus of the observatory initiative. Is there a minimum or maximum number of countries that should be covered by a regional observatory? A regional observatory needs to cover all countries in the region of focus. And in the call document, there is Annex B that lists all the countries. However, we understand that in-depth study of each GPE partner country may not be possible. As indicated in the call document, implementing partners may consider, for instance, including all countries in the region of focus for document review, but focus on a smaller set of countries for in-depth case studies. And you, for example, can try to cluster those countries into groups and then just do some work around them. Let me just go back to the previous slides. Apologies about that. And the last question, can initiatives span across the regions predefined in the call? And the answer is no. Initiative must align with the predefined regions, and proposals for work that cut across defined regions will not be considered. We will support an informal community of practice across funded projects across the regional observatories. So there will be an opportunities to interact and collaborate, but each partner is supposed to focus to stay within its region of focus.
All right, so we are on slide 26 if you are following in the Spanish or French versions. Question came in, how do I submit a proposal? Is it only online? And the answer is yes. So there's a landing page on IDRC's website about this call. And from there, there is a link to the detailed call document, to the frequently asked questions page. And you'll also find a button at the bottom that says apply online. Click on that and it will take you to the online application form. Applications that we get by email will not be considered.
The question about the number of proposals, can organizations submit more than one application in response to this call? We encourage applicants to submit one proposal only. This being said, an organization can be part of multiple consortia.
So we got a question about observatory outputs. Could we provide guidelines regarding the number of reports the observatory should produce, their geographic scope, their frequency, their complexity? So we're leaving a lot of this to you. As part of the application process, we ask applicants to outline a knowledge mobilization strategy. And that strategy should present potential primary research outputs like reports or white papers or even peer-reviewed articles, as well as secondary knowledge products, blogs, policy briefs, infographics. These should all be developed with users and uses and available resources in mind. So we don't have expectations regarding the number of outputs of each regional observatory, but certainly, especially those secondary knowledge products, there would be multiple different kinds geared to different use. However, it's important for us that the findings are captured through appropriate outputs, they're made publicly available, and they're mobilized. So think of a suite of outputs.
Another question that we receive, do you expect some standardization across observatories that may require additional effort beyond what each observatory needs to do independently? We do not expect standardization in terms of research approaches, outputs, or knowledge mobilization strategies. However, as mentioned, there will be an informal community of practice among regional observatories. And as part of it, we can agree on some standardization if needed.
So those are the questions that we received ahead of this webinar. And now it's time to answer questions that you might still have. In order to submit a question, there are some reminders in the chat about how to do this. You click on the Q&A option at the bottom toolbar of this Zoom meeting window. In the space provided, you enter your question about the call and you press send. Your questions won't be displayed publicly, but our colleagues are receiving them and we'll send them over to Serhi and I so that we can answer as many as we can during this hour. So we have about 30 minutes left. So with our colleagues collecting these questions and sending them to us, please be patient if there are a couple of pauses, but we will do our best now to answer as many as we can. I think, Serhi, you should probably stop sharing your screen. All right, so I think the first question comes to me. Do we favor applications from consortia or individual organizations? So we don't have a preference. All applications are equally considered.
Another question that we received, is it possible for a lead organization to work with the network of independent researchers throughout the target region to achieve the required air coverage? And the answer to that is yes. Organizations can seek services of independent researchers to fulfill the project objectives, and these researchers can be project consultants as an instance. And as mentioned earlier, we would not view them as the consortium partners.
This question. In the purpose and anticipated results section of the detailed call document, it mentions describing how the project will ensure complementarity with other relevant initiatives in the region of focus. Could we clarify what is meant by other relevant initiatives? Does that include initiatives of GPE KIX specifically, or initiatives beyond that, or both? So it would be both. It's expected that projects, especially in the rationale and contextualization sections of the proposal, would be able to show how what you're proposing recognizes, connects, and collaborates or draws on other similar initiatives in the region, either that are part of KIX or GPE, or other relevant initiatives, all of which are generating, synthesizing, and mobilizing evidence and learning. The relevance is justified the proponent in line with the priorities and context in which they plan to operate. So what we're asking here is that you take a look around as what other organizations, initiatives, and actors are doing that connects to the different aspects of education resilience, and you make sure that what you are proposing adds value, builds on, and maybe is thinking about ways of connecting, because we all want to serve education systems and we don't want to be overlapping or duplicating what others are doing.
Another question that we received is the following. We are a registered nonprofit institute, but not registered with the NGO Affairs Bureau. Do we have to be an NGO to get funding for this project? The question is the following. An institution must be legally registered in the low or middle income country where it's headquartered. Individual organizations may be NGOs, civil society organizations, universities, academic institutions, research institutions, think tanks, networks, associations, private sector organizations, or private foundations, not for profit.
Is it possible for a lead applicant to be based in a GPE partner country, but also include project partners from non-GPE countries as part of the proposed project? And for sure, yes. So as we said, the lead organization needs to be based in an LMIC, so in a lower middle income country, whether those are GPE partner countries or not. So the members of the consortia beyond the lead can be from other lower middle income countries, whether they be GPE or non-GPE partner countries, or high income countries or anywhere else.
Another question is about the budget. In the budget justification section, we are asked to explain why the requested funding amount is required for the proposed research. Could you please clarify the level of the detail expected? Are we expected to justify costs at a micro level, such as by activity, or should the justification focus more broadly on outputs and outcomes? So there are two ways that you will be doing that. There is a budget template, and in the budget template, there are budget notes. So you need to include notes for each item that you include in the budget. And the budget notes provide a descriptive justification of the line item amount, explanation, information to link or tie the item to the methodology in the proposal. And then in the proposal, we expect just kind of overall brief explanation why you are asking this amount of money. And yes, you can tie it to your outputs and outcomes.
About the request for a 2-page CV of the lead applicant, are we to submit the CV of just one representative from the lead applicant organization? Actually, no, we're looking for more because we expect that this type of initiative would require a team. So please submit CVs of all your key personnel that demonstrate the overall capacity to undertake this work. And please look for the key areas of expertise that are highlighted in the call document and think about how your team covers off all of that expertise.
We have a question about the project team capacities. In the project team capacities section, it requests an overview of the project team structure, including their roles and relevant expertise. Should the project team overview outline the roles only, or should it also include information about specific individuals fulfilling this role? We recommend you to outline both roles and the individuals fulfilling these roles. However, if you do not have individuals identified at this point, you can outline the role and relevant experience and expertise of these individuals who will have that role.
Okay. I'm going to just actually ask Sedhi about this next question that's coming in. Regarding
sure.
additional documents, we note the requirement to submit a work plan. Will there be a format provided or template for this? Or could you please clarify what elements we should include with the work plan? Sedhi, are we going to give a standardized version? Because we generally don't.
Exactly. You feel free kind of to use your own template. You know, we do not have like an Excel spreadsheet or a Word document template, but we just would like to have a clear understanding, you know, of your proposed activities, you know, the timeline, the outputs, and all of that. So kind of like standard information that you would include in the work plan.
Thanks. Over to you.
Okay, there is a question about research questions. Do we have to formulate new research questions based on the 3 questions already stated in the call? As noted in the call document, you may adjust or modify guiding objectives and research questions based on the scope of your activities, proposed design and methodology, and overall vision for the project in the region of focus. So what you have in the call document is just kind of guiding parameters, and we ask you to operationalize and customize to your own work that you will be doing in a specific region.
Another question, can the team come from many universities in one country? So yeah, teams can be formed by members of different research institutions as part of the same team, sure.
We have a question about UN-affiliated institutions where they can be consortium partners. Yes, they can be consortium partners, but cannot be lead organizations. Only organizations based in low and middle income countries are eligible to be lead grantees.
Can knowledge and activities also be generated in and or from non-GPE partner countries? Well, so as a mechanism, again, of GPE, KIX focuses and is of service to the education systems of GPE partner countries. So it needs to focus in those 6 regions, all defined in the call. So please see Annex B. Taking from this question, you're wondering whether good practice from other places that maybe, you know, GPE partner countries might find useful. There could be some flexibility with that, but really the focus of the work of this initiative needs to be of and for GPE partner countries. So that really should be the focus.
Okay, we have another question. Can umbrella associations of private schools in targeted countries apply? Do they need to have an endorsement from the government? So the umbrella association must be a legal entity registered in a low middle income country. An endorsement from the government is not mandatory. Please note that for-profit providers of co-education services are not eligible for funding. And also we would like, again, to draw your attention to the 4 main kind of criteria that we outlined for the implementing partners, right? You need to have a strong research record at the regional or a multi-country level, have a strong record of conducting social science research and all of that. What the observatory project is not an implementation project, it's more of a research project. So we would like to draw your attention to this.
Question, are there specific domains that are a priority for the regional observatories? So we would point you to the detailed call document and to the underlying scoping study that notes that in different regions, there are different primary areas where education resilience needs to be considering their work. So across the board, We want you just to take a look at the region in which you are focused and decide what aspects of resilience and what are the domains that are most pertinent, also in light of what other initiatives and organizations are doing. What kind of niche, what kind of contribution could your project give in the light of the broad issues of education system resilience? So we did not predefine which domain specifically in each subregion or region should be a focus, and we're going to ask you to choose which domains are the most important for your proposal.
Another question that we received is, are we required to stay in respective countries throughout the study period, or we can travel as needed to complete the study? And the answer is yes to this. Organizations can plan and budget for all relevant travel requirements to implement the observatory initiative. But again, as mentioned earlier in the webinar, we do not expect you to travel to every single country in the region of a focus, right? You kind of need to think kind of how you can cluster countries and all of that. But definitely you can visit some countries for data collection and other purposes.
Is there a limit to staff time while budgeting? So IDRC's normal guidelines are that staff should not exceed 25% of the budget. However, given the nature of the observatory initiative, IDRC would be open to considering personnel budgets that are somewhat higher than that 25% limit, but there would need to be a clear justification for why that would be the case.
Another question that we received, it says, one of the guiding research questions, what are some potentially effective approaches to addressing future disruptions in GPE partner countries? So for this research question, can we include an impact evaluation of specific interventions that are being or have been implemented to address such disruptions? So we do not expect implementing partners to conduct any impact evaluations. When it comes to the exploration of future disruptions and foresight research, we envision you doing consultations with relevant stakeholders to identify what are some of the drivers of change or signals of change and the implications of that. And as part of the discussions, you can discuss with them potential solutions, right, that are already maybe available or some of the things that they are thinking about. So we do not envision you to conduct impact evaluations as part of the observatory initiative. It's more kind of a consultations with the relevant actors.
Question came in, what is the expected level of involvement of IDRC in the project implementation itself? So IDRC staff are not going to be implementing these projects. These are grants that will be then implementing applied research projects by the grantees. IDRC staff are grant managers. We try to play the role of connectors. As Seti has mentioned a couple of times, we will be facilitating an informal community of practice amongst the organizations involved across this initiative to look for complementarities, mutual learning, and probably knowledge mobilization across. Those are the types of roles that IDRC would be playing. We really want to help you connect with other relevant initiatives, with the KIX regional hubs, and with other ways to amplify the impact of what is going to happen through this initiative.
Another question that we received is, can multilateral organizations participate? For example, a consortia of multilateral agencies or United Nations agencies. So UN agencies and multilateral organizations can be part of consortia, but they cannot be a lead organization unless they are headquartered in a low or middle income country.
Should the observatory focus on all the topics proposed in the call for proposals, or can it choose priority topics in the region? Please choose. Regional observatories should decide on specific topics and domains that they will work on under the two components, the examination of practices of education system resilience and foresight. So the call document mentions domains like climate change, super important, migration and displacement, food insecurity, technological advancements, education financing, public health, maybe natural disasters. Please propose other domains if you consider them relevant, but think about what should be the focus that you would be focused on in your proposal. There may
And I
be
guess-
a couple of them at the same time. Go ahead, sorry.
And I guess the next question is very similar to what Trish you have just answered, right? The applicants are again asking, does the observatory project have to cover all the topics mentioned in the call document, right? Or just focus on a specific ones? And as Trish has just mentioned, you do not need to cover everything. You need to focus on the areas that you believe are important in the context in which you are going to be working. So for example, you know, if you are going to focus on the observatory in the Pacific, so the issue of the climate change is very pertinent to that area. So you definitely can consider that. You know, in some other areas, it might be conflicts and displacements that is an important, right? So given the context in which you'll be working, think some of the areas, and you do not need to decide on those areas right away. You can do a bit of kind of scope and study consultations, right? And then decide on the areas on which you're going to prioritize in the project.
The question came in that we clarify the involvement of researchers from outside low and middle income countries. Can they be project personnel? Yeah. The research team and partner organizations in a consortia especially can be from a country that is not low or middle income. Of course, the lead organization must be from a lower middle income country, but any other members or staff or consultants employed can be from anywhere.
Another question is having a partner from the global north on the application mandatory? Is there a benefit to having a partner from the global north? So no, it is not mandatory, and all applications would be kind of reviewed kind of without giving a specific preference, you know, to an application if it does or doesn't have a partner from the global north.
Can the project lead be a consultant affiliated with our organization rather than a permanent member of our team? Yes, that's possible. If the project lead is to be hired specifically for the role, that would be fine.
Another question that we received: whom do you expect regional observatories to engage in countries of focus when undertaking two components of the project? So we encourage implementing partners to do a quick stakeholder mapping at the start of the project to better understand who is involved in shaping education system resilience in the countries and regions of focus. Some countries have, for example, ministries or agencies responsible for the disaster management and relief, and their activities and policies can have implications for the education sector. All of this to say is that we should not limit the examination of the topic of resilience only with the actors from the education sector. It's more kind of a multi-sectoral activity and something that you need to consider as you plan your project.
I'm going to just tag on to that one because this is such an important issue that when we think about resilience, resilience is a multi-sector kind of idea. And so we want these initiatives to really think about what the implications are for the education sector, but they need to be scanning broadly. And if I can go back to this important focus on gender equality, equity, and inclusion, please also think about those aspects and who needs to be involved in this kind of research in order to make sure that we're really thinking critically about how disaster response or how education system resilience can really be made in a way that strengthens gender equality, equity, and inclusion. So another question is, do we give preference to any particular foresight methodologies in the implementation of the second component? And the answer is no, we don't have a preference for any specific foresight methodology. Whatever you choose, please just make sure that it fits the purpose and would help you address the problem that you are proposing to examine. Some relevant methodologies, if you just want a couple of suggestions, could be emerging issue analysis, 3 horizons, future wheels, but there's a number of foresight methodologies that you might choose from among.
Another question that we receive is a consortium of 3 institutions, as an example. Should all of those institutions have legal status and registration? Yes. So basically, if you have 3 consortium partners, all of your consortium partners should have legal status or registration.
Are we expected to mobilize knowledge from all countries in our region? So the observatories should cover all countries through various means, but we don't envision that implementing both of the components of the observatory initiative to require an in-depth study of every GPE partner country in the region of focus. So you could consider, for instance, including all countries in the region of focus in a document review, maybe other types of stakeholder engagement or surveys, but focus on a smaller set of countries for in-depth case studies. But when it comes to the knowledge mobilization and helping support the use of this, I would hope that every initiative was thinking about how this initiative could be of use to all the countries in the region of focus.
Another question is asking, can case studies implemented during the COVID-19 pandemic still be used for the first component of the observatory initiative? And the first component of the observatory initiative is about examining meanings and practices of education system resilience. Yes, definitely. If you believe, that there are some case studies that we are talking about how countries were trying to address, this topic of resilience during the COVID pandemic, or maybe they develop some further policies and practice as a result of the pandemic. All of that can feed into the first question, but kind of the first component. But what we are trying, our initial thinking behind this first component is that when we conducted the scoping study, we quickly realized that education resilience means different things to different people, and it's being practiced in different ways on the ground, and its understanding it's still evolving, even though we talk a lot about it. So we're just kind of trying to gauge how different countries understand and practice education system resilience, and their responses to the COVID pandemic can feed into that.
So this is a repeat question, but since somebody, maybe it wasn't clear, can the personnel budget be more than 25% of the total? So just to reiterate, typically IDRC does not allow for personnel budgets to be more than 25% of the total budget. However, given the nature of this type of initiative, IDRC is open to considering personnel budgets that are higher than the 25% limit. I would say like 80% won't work, but somewhat marginally higher than 25% might be considered. But you would need to provide a justification for the personnel budgets and what that would accomplish in the project.
Another question is asking, do you prefer the observatories to focus on national level shocks, or do you also consider sub-national level shocks? In the call document, we provide general parameters for the observatory research and suggestions on which each component may focus, right? So we ask applicants to operationalize these general parameters in proposals considering the region of focus. So if you believe it's important in your region of focus to consider just disruptions and shocks at different levels, you're welcome to do so.
So I'm going to answer this question. I'm going to check with Serhi that it's correct. Can one agency submit a combined proposal for 2 sub-regions within the Europe, Middle East, Asia Pacific region? We would suggest that you don't do that you submit, if you wish, you can submit a proposal for 2 different sub-regions, but keep them separate, because we have already allocated funding divisions and rationales within the detailed call document based on the subdivisions as they are laid out. So please keep these separate. If you, of course, like as we've been saying, the initiatives that are funded through this observatory project will not operate in isolation from one another. We understand that there are connections and probably knowledge mobilization and maybe research opportunities that might span subregions, but for the purposes of your proposal, we suggest that you stick with the subregions as laid out. Is that good with you, Serhi? Okay.
Yeah, I think it's a good answer. We have been asking to clarify what do we mean when we say that IDRC will support the partners with the foresight component of the project through capacity strengthening and sharing of the best practices. So again, to repeat myself, we will have an informal community of practice. And as part of this informal community of practice, we envision doing kind of webinars or trainings on foresight methodologies for implementing partners if needed, kind of sharing with them resources or kind of names of experts on which they can draw.
Maybe I can just tag on, if you don't mind, Seti, that
Sure.
IDRC has been supporting an increasing focus on foresight analysis across a number of different domains, whether they be health or various other subject matter, not yet in education. So if you're interested, you might take a look at IDRC's website to see other foresight initiatives, and maybe you would get some ideas on how organizations that are doing research for development are picking up foresight in very use-oriented ways. So if you're interested, IDRC's website would have named a couple of projects that are doing this. Do we plan to provide support so that the ministries of education contribute with information and meetings, easing the job for the observatories? So we would expect that the selected grantees would build on previous experience and work with their ministries of education. KIX sends out letters to ministries of education introducing grantees and new projects once the projects are ready to start. We are not going to be brokering specific information gathering activities, but providing the general context of KIX and connections through the regional hubs for knowledge mobilization. But we would expect that the grantees who are taking this on would be well placed to be able to do this research on their own.
And we have one question about the regional observatory focusing on Africa. The question is, East, West, Central, and Southern Africa, are these regions treated as separate entities given the vastness of the continent, or should the call include all this kind of 4 subregions? So we are treating these 4 subregions as one region, right? And the regional observatory in Africa will cover East, West, Central, and Southern Africa.
All right, we're really getting to the end here. Let's see if we can fit a couple more questions in. What is the target research start date? So we expect that grant agreements would be signed by December 2024, and research would begin at that time.
I guess probably the last question that we are going to take, will there be an opportunity or requirements to present and discuss the proposed projects in further as shortlisted candidates? No, we will not be shortlisting candidates from this call. Final decisions will be based on the proposals submitted, and then as part of the inception phase with the successful applicants, we will work on the refinement of their proposals if necessary.
Okay, I think we should probably wrap up.
Yes. So we are at the end of our webinar. We hope you found it useful, that it helped to clarify some of the questions that you may have about the call document and the observatory initiative. You can still send your questions, if any, to the kixcall@idrc.ca email address, and we will be happy to respond to them. But we also encourage you to check the FAQ page, which will be updating, and read the call document. And here, just a reminder about the key dates. Your proposals are due on July 11th at midnight Eastern Daylight Time. We'll be reviewing the proposals in July and August using the criteria presented in the call document. And we will inform applicants of the results on September 2nd.